July 3rd, the Battle of Confusion.
Oh, we'll rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. And we'll rally from the hillside, we'll gather from the plain, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitor and up with the star. While we rally round the flag, boys, we rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. Oh, we're springing to the call for 300,000 more, shouting the battle cry of freedom. And we'll fill the vacant ranks of our brothers gone before, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah!
Our chapter, Retreat and Pursuit, takes place in Gettysburg. Lee has just lost the battle and he decides to retreat back to Virginia. After Lee retreats, Meade decides to go after him and finish the battle.
I'll place my knapsack on my back, my rifle on my shoulder.
Meade had finally won, but they were not satisfied by the way they had won. Meade was afraid, and Lee eventually escaped. Although he had won, the Union suffered a lot, and they lost a lot of soldiers during the battle. A lot of soldiers were also wounded. Here is one example of soldiers giving commands in our chapter. Julia Jacobs moved to stand in the doorway of her house to yell at the Union soldiers. "They're coming, they're coming." People turned to look at Julia as well as the Confederate soldiers. The Confederate leader began to yell at the soldiers. "Hurry up, stop her, attack her home." The generals continued to burn down her home and shoot the girl in the doorway as the general continues to spit out orders. The first passage that was very important that we found is, although the real meaning of Meade's victory at Gettysburg emerged only with the passing of time, its immediate effect was to give the Army of the Potomac a sense of triumph which grew into an imperishable faith in itself. The men knew what they could do under an extremely competent general. One of lesser ability and courage could well have lost the battle. The Confederates had put forth their best efforts and their best army, but they were not strong enough, for the Army of the Potomac, weak as it was, finally lived up to its promise. The mistakes of the Confederates, which another battle would have been mere slips of the tongue, so to speak, became fatal at Gettysburg. Unfortunately, the people of the country, frustrated at seeing Lee retreat across the Potomac without another challenge from Meade, seemed to ignore the magnitude of the Union victory and its enormous cost. They failed to realize that after the battle, Meade no longer possessed a truly effective instrument for the accomplishment of his tasks. The Army indeed needed a thorough reorganization with commanders and fresh troops, but these changes were not made until Grant appeared on the scene in March of 1864. The second one we found was on page 533 of Gettysburg, a testing of courage. Shortly after 10:30 a.m., a full-scale mission was undertaken to fix the enemy's new position. Henry Slocum personally led a bridge seized expedition force on a wide swing to the east that allowed it to enter the town via the Hanover Road. A soldier in those ranks would remember that he and his fellows moved cautiously, every moment expecting to hear the rebel shells in their midst. When they at last reached Gettysburg, the 12th Corps men made quite an impression. "Ye gods!" exclaimed Daniel Skelly. "What a welcome sight for the imprisoned people of Gettysburg! The boys in blue marching down the street, fife and drum corps playing, the glorious stars and stripes fluttering at the head of the lines." The good spirits came to an abrupt end, however, on the western side of town, where rebel riflemen had drawn a new dead line.
The old gold actually smiled. This could be an auspicious day. The definition of auspicious is fortunate, prosperous, of good omen, promising, or favorable. Many people vacillate when they shop for clothes. Vacillate sounds like oscillate, which means to swing back and forth. Vacillate means to waver between decisions, to be indecisive. The manager in our office is too officious and always intrusive and domineering. The definition of officious is intrusive, domineering, and meddlesome. To be or not to be? That is the question. Soliloquy. An utterance or discourse by a person who is talking to himself or herself or is disregardful of or oblivious to any hearers present. Often used as a device in drama to disclose a character's innermost thoughts. Hamlet's soliloquy begins with to be or not to be. Arduous. It's going to be an arduous trip to my office on the 95th floor. The first definition of arduous that I found was demanding great care, effort, or labor. Another definition I found was requiring great exertion, laborious, difficult, and arduous undertaking. An example of irony that we found was in our first passage, Retreat and Pursuit, on page 537. As the army departed from the battlefield, 6,802 Confederates still lay in scores of houses, barns, churches, schools, and other public buildings in Gettysburg and the surrounding countryside. A few of their own surgeons and orderlies remained with them, but for the most part, they had to depend upon their enemies for care. We consider this irony because we found it very ironic that they had to rely upon their enemies for what they needed. From the chapter that we read, one part that stood out was an Invincible on page 530, chapter 15. This is unlucky. Yes, Lee replied at last. It has been a sad, sad day to us. The usually reserved army commander followed up another minute or so of silence with a brief soliloquy in which he alternately praised Pickett's men and bemoaned the fact that his plan had not been properly implemented, With the anguish of a master designer who has seen one of his finest constructs flocking to the failing of others, Lee allowed himself a rare venting. Too bad, he exclaimed. Oh, too bad. Almost as suddenly as he had rolled up, Lee's personal storm subsided, and he became all business. We consider this unlucky because imagine if you put a whole bunch of work in to have a plan for your team to mess it up for you. The eulogy of President Thaddeus Stevens. President Thaddeus Stevens will truly be missed. He was born April 4th, 1792, and died August 11th, 1868. He was the age of 76 whenever he died. Although it has been 148 years since his death, his legend still, and always will, live on for many more generations. His efforts to end slavery and secure the African American right shall forever reign. We all thank you for your hard work, multiple efforts, and never-ending support for equality rights. May you rest in peace forever. Mr. Thaddeus Stevens.
Deaths and survivors. There were 7,000 soldiers killed, 20,000 soldiers wounded, and 50,000 soldiers in total. There were also as many as 50,000 soldiers and mules killed. There was an overwhelming amount of corpses everywhere. Since there were too many corpses, most of them were left to decompose in the July sun. Land preserved. 87% of the land was preserved. In total, Gettysburg is 1,063 acres. 927 of those acres were preserved. In other words, there are still 136 acres yet to be preserved. Now on to the credits. McKenna was the task manager, Brianna was the video editor, and Doris was the secretary. From Edwin Coddington's book, The Gettysburg Campaign, Chapter 15, A Testing of Courage. From Edwin Coddington's book, The Gettysburg Campaign, Chapter 20, Retreat and Pursuit. 3 internet sources we used were History.com, HamiltonBand.com, and GettysburgFoundation.org.
The battle cry of freedom, the Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah. Down with the traitor and up with the star, while we rally round the flag, boys, we rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. Oh, we're springing to the call for 300,000 more.